What if everything you thought you knew about a beloved royal family member was a lie? The words hung in the air like a thunderclap over Buckingham Palace. Not a single person in Meghan Markle's inner circle could have predicted what was about to unfold. And yet, there she was, standing under the chandeliers of a glamorous gala, smiling for the cameras, sipping champagne, while the storm was already building, just out of sight. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. Everyone saw the laughter, the poised elegance, the picture-perfect life. But behind the mask of royal composure, Meghan's heartbeat had picked up. Something wasn't right. Something catastrophic. In a world where every glance, every word, every social media post could ignite a frenzy, Meghan had always believed she was in control. The headlines, the paparazzi, the relentless scrutiny, she had learned to navigate it all. But this time, this was different. This was a revelation that could shatter everything she had built, everything she thought she knew, everything the world thought it knew. Because just hours before, a storm had begun brewing in the unlikeliest of places, Tom Bower's study. A man who had made a career exposing secrets, uncovering lies that even the most polished public figures couldn't hide. A man whose pen had toppled kings and presidents, whose words had left audiences gasping in disbelief. And now, he had his sights set on Meghan Markle. Bower had something nobody expected, something so explosive that when it hit the airwaves, the world would stop, blink, and ask, could this really be true? And the truth? It wasn't about money, it wasn't about power, it wasn't even about scandal in the usual sense. It was about a child. A child at the center of a story that had captivated millions. A child whose identity was about to shake not only Meghan's world, but the very foundations of the monarchy. Archie. To the public, he was the sweet, innocent, curly-haired son of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. A boy who had already captured hearts around the globe. But what if he wasn't who we thought he was? Bower had uncovered documents, testimonies, whispers behind palace doors, and private admissions that pointed to a truth so shocking that even seasoned royal watchers were struggling to process it. And he didn't just hint at it. No, he went live, on television, in front of millions. And he said the words that would haunt Meghan for the rest of her life. Words that would send a panic through her very soul. Because for the first time, the world might see Meghan not as a duchess who charmed the public, not as a celebrity turned royal, but as a woman facing the unthinkable. Facing a truth that she couldn't spin, couldn't edit, couldn't control. And Harry? Harry was caught in a maelstrom too. A father, a husband, and a prince, now forced to confront a reality he had never imagined. One that challenged his loyalty, his love, and perhaps even the life he had carefully chosen for his family. But let's step back for a moment. Before the cameras rolled, before the headlines screamed, before social media erupted, Meghan had a life. A life meticulously curated. Every event, every outfit, every charity appearance was calculated. Every smile was studied. And yet, none of it could prepare her for what was coming. Bower's revelation wasn't just a shock, it was a seismic shift. It tore through the polished veneer of royal life. It challenged everything the public believed about family, about love, about loyalty. And it forced every person involved to ask themselves one impossible question. Who can you trust when the truth is hiding in plain sight? Because the truth isn't always kind. It isn't always fair. And it isn't always what we want it to be. Sometimes it's brutal. And sometimes it changes everything. The day Bower went live, social media exploded. Within minutes, memes were circulating, hashtags were trending, and public opinion began to fracture. The world divided itself into camps, some shocked, some skeptical, and some ruthlessly critical. Every news outlet, every gossip column, every influencer weighed in. And through it all, Meghan's panic only grew. She retreated behind closed doors, consulting her team, strategizing her next move. But the truth has a way of escaping even the most carefully constructed PR campaigns. Even the most loyal aides couldn't stop it. Meanwhile, Harry was torn. Loyal to his wife, devoted to his child, and yet increasingly aware that the world might never see Archie the way they once had. Every public appearance, every smile for the cameras, carried the weight of secrecy and dread. And as Bower's revelation sank deeper into the public consciousness, Harry knew that the consequences would be far-reaching, far beyond anything they had faced before. And it wasn't just about Meghan or Harry or Archie. It was about the monarchy itself. Every royal institution, every tradition, every carefully guarded secret, suddenly vulnerable. A scandal of this magnitude could not only alter public perception, but also threaten the stability of centuries-old structures. Yet even amidst this chaos, one truth remained clear: the story was far from over. The revelation was only the beginning. Behind every headline, behind every leaked document, there were deeper secrets, hidden motives, and unexpected betrayals waiting to surface. And the most shocking part? No one, not even Meghan herself, could predict what came next. Because when Bower revealed Archie's identity, it was just the tip of the iceberg. Questions began to circulate. How could this have happened? Who knew? Could Harry even accept the truth? What would the public do? And most importantly, what would Meghan do next? The answer would redefine the narrative of one of the most watched families in the world. It would test loyalty, love, and the very idea of family. And as the dust settled, one thing was certain: the world would never see Meghan, Harry, or Archie the same way again. So buckle up, because in this story, every revelation leads to another. Every secret unlocks a deeper truth. And every cliffhanger leaves you questioning everything you thought you knew about royalty, identity, and betrayal. But the shock doesn't stop at the revelation. What happened next is something nobody saw coming. And that is where we begin. Just days before the world would explode, Meghan thought she had everything under control. The sun had barely risen over Los Angeles, yet Meghan was already awake, scrolling through her phone in the quiet of her bedroom. The soft hum of the city below seemed a world away from the chaos that was about to consume her life. She sipped her latte, meticulously prepared exactly the way she liked it, and smiled at the carefully filtered pictures she had scheduled to post for the day. Everything looked perfect. On Instagram, she appeared radiant, philanthropic, and effortlessly poised. In reality, behind the carefully curated life, a storm was quietly forming, one that not even the most sophisticated PR strategy could predict. Meghan had become a master at control. Every smile, every word, every handshake could be analyzed, dissected, and repurposed. Every step she took was a performance, rehearsed and precise. But the truth, as Meghan would soon discover, has a way of slipping through the cracks. For months, whispers had floated around the edges of the royal world. Quiet rumors, subtle hints in obscure publications, fleeting comments from former aides and palace staff. Meghan had always dismissed them. She had to. To dwell on every insinuation would drive anyone insane. And yet, that tiny flicker of doubt, the one she never allowed herself to acknowledge, was about to ignite into a blaze she could not put out. Harry was in the next room, reviewing schedules for upcoming engagements. He glanced up occasionally, catching Meghan's eye, offering a small smile that was meant to reassure, but even he couldn't shake the growing tension. There was a heaviness in the air, subtle, almost imperceptible, like the moment before a storm breaks. "Everything's fine," Meghan whispered, more to herself than to Harry, and she tried to believe it, because to admit fear now would be to surrender to it, and surrender was never an option. Days earlier, Meghan had attended a high-profile gala. The cameras adored her. Paparazzi followed her every step. Royals, celebrities, and influencers alike praised her elegance, her poise, her ability to navigate two worlds at once. But behind that poised exterior, Meghan's mind was racing. Every compliment felt like a countdown clock. Every smile felt like it masked a looming threat. And that threat had a name: Tom Bower. She had heard of him, of course. Everyone had. The investigative journalist with a reputation for exposing the untold, the hidden, the dangerous truths that public figures tried desperately to conceal. Bower had a way of peeling back the polished veneer of royalty, of celebrity, of any institution that thrived on illusion. And Meghan knew, deep down, that it wasn't a matter of if he would come after her, it was when. The question wasn't whether Bower would reveal something about her, it was what he would reveal. For weeks, she had been quietly assessing, calculating, maneuvering. Every phone call, every email, every private conversation had been meticulously logged and filtered through her team. She had even considered the possibility of discrediting him before he could act. But Bauer was unlike anyone she had dealt with. His investigations were surgical, precise, and backed by facts, documents, and testimonies that could not be easily dismissed. And then came the hint, subtle but terrifying. A source close to him had reached out anonymously. A simple message, cryptic, but enough to send Meghan's pulse racing. He knows. And it's bigger than you think. She had stared at the words for a long time, feeling the first real pang of panic in months. Bigger than she thought? What could possibly be bigger than the carefully constructed public persona she had built over years? The answer, as she would soon learn, was Archie. To the outside world, Archie was the darling of the media. Sweet, charming, curly-haired, adored by millions. A boy who represented the perfect fusion of modern royalty and celebrity glamour. But Bauer's investigation had dug beneath the surface. And beneath that surface lay a truth that could not only shatter Meghan's life, but also challenge everything Harry believed, everything the public had embraced, and everything the royal institution depended upon. Meghan tried to push it from her mind. She sipped her latte, scrolled through her calendar, rehearsed the public statements she might need in the future. But anxiety is an insidious companion. It creeps into the quiet moments, lodges in the back of your mind, and waits for the perfect opportunity to strike. And Bauer's revelation was about to strike. She tried to focus on normalcy. She reminded herself of her philanthropic work, her public engagements, the careful balance she maintained between celebrity life and royal duties. She thought of Harry, Archie, and the small bubble of family life they had carved out for themselves. She thought of how she had promised to protect Archie from the glare of the world, to shield him from the very kind of scrutiny she now feared was imminent. But nothing could protect him from the truth. Meanwhile, Harry was preparing for a video call with some charity partners. He glanced at Meghan, noticed her distracted gaze, and reached out. A hand on her shoulder, an attempt at reassurance, a silent promise that they would weather whatever came. But even Harry's steady presence couldn't quell the storm brewing beyond their front door. Because Bauer was meticulous. He was thorough, and he had amassed a dossier that, when revealed, would send shockwaves across the globe. He didn't operate on rumors or half-truths. He had evidence. He had witnesses. He had facts that would make the most disciplined PR team scramble in desperation. And the moment of reckoning was almost here. Meghan's phone buzzed. A notification she couldn't ignore. She opened it, her stomach tightening. It was a media alert. Bauer was scheduled to appear on live television in the next hour. And while Meghan had faced press scrutiny before, nothing could have prepared her for the specific revelation he was about to make. Her mind raced. How could she respond? What could she say? Could she even control the narrative this time? For once, Meghan felt powerless. Outside, Los Angeles hummed along, oblivious. The city went about its day, unaware that within a sleek, modern home, a global scandal was about to erupt. Within hours, social media would light up. Within hours, the public would demand answers. Within hours, Meghan would face the single most challenging moment of her life. She took a deep breath, straightened her posture, and forced a smile. Appearances had always been everything. But appearances would not save her this time. Because Bauer's revelation was coming. And it wasn't just going to shake Meghan. It was going to shake the entire world. And when it hit the airwaves, Meghan thought, everything I've built, everything I've controlled, it will all collapse. The calm before the storm was over. And the storm? It was just beginning. Who is Tom Bauer, and why does he terrify royals? Tom Bauer doesn't knock. He doesn't hint. He doesn't whisper. When Bauer comes for you, the world hears it loud and clear, and the consequences echo far beyond your private life. For Meghan Markle, Tom Bauer was the shadow she never fully saw until now. Bauer, the British investigative journalist and author, had built a career on exposing the untold. He had toppled titans, unmasked the seemingly untouchable, and, in doing so, carved a reputation that struck fear into the hearts of politicians, celebrities, and royalty alike. His books weren't just words on paper. They were seismic detonations, tearing through polished facades and leaving a trail of scandal in their wake. It started innocuously enough. Bauer, sitting in his London study, surrounded by stacks of legal documents, court transcripts, and old letters, sipped his tea, and reviewed his notes. His eyes, sharp and calculating, scanned a dossier thicker than most people's phone books. Every page contained secrets carefully buried, whispers gathered from the shadows of power, and documents painstakingly verified over months, sometimes years. This was no ordinary investigation. Bauer didn't rely on speculation or gossip columns. He relied on proof. And in Meghan Markle's case, the proof was explosive. For months, Bauer had been quietly digging into the Duchess of Sussex's life. It wasn't personal, it was professional. He was drawn to the story not for sensationalism, but for its undeniable significance. A high-profile royal scandal that had the potential to shift public perception, challenge royal protocol, and disrupt centuries of tradition. And at the center of it all was a child, Archie. Bauer's sources were as varied as they were credible: palace insiders, former aides, journalists who had crossed paths with Meghan over the years, and documents that had never seen the light of day. Each piece of information was cross-referenced, verified, and double-checked. Nothing escaped his scrutiny. Bauer's methodology was surgical. A misplaced fact, a false lead, a single exaggeration could destroy credibility, and he knew it. The story, once fully compiled, was damning. Not because of scandal for scandal's sake, but because it revealed a truth so startling that it threatened to unravel the carefully constructed narrative surrounding Meghan and her family. And Bauer had a platform. A live broadcast. Millions would watch. And when he spoke, the words would carry weight. They would be impossible to ignore. Bauer had a history with royalty. He had exposed the hidden lives of public figures with a ruthless precision. Politicians had tried to discredit him. Celebrities had threatened legal action. And yet, time and time again, his work stood firm because it was anchored in undeniable fact. His reputation was not just built on courage, it was built on accuracy. And Meghan? She was about to learn the cost of that accuracy. The journalist had spent hours, days, even weeks analyzing every angle. He knew that a revelation of this magnitude would send shockwaves far beyond the immediate family. It would ignite tabloids, dominate social media, and divide public opinion. And he was ready. He had rehearsed, verified, and prepared for every possible counterattack, every spin, every denial.